Welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the fantasy master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. Gray, we have real, actual baseball to talk about. This is going to be a great podcast, other than us complaining the entire time.
Look at I'm doing a cute face.
Is that for baseball being back? Are you posing for baseball?
Yeah, I'm posing for baseball. Oh my god, it's such a nice weekend. I was like I was doing, stuff around the house with baseball on in the background. It was like heaven again until day 2, and Ron Washington had played Anthony Rendon at leadoff second game in a row, and then that just continued. How is Anthony Rendon? Like, see the problem with, like, thank God Anthony Rendon is doing nothing at leadoff, because like Anthony Rendon and then Aaron Hicks is the 1-2 right in front of Mike Trout and Taylor Ward. And I only really am mad about the Angels lineup because I have Louis Rengifo in every league. So I need Rengifo to actually play, and he doesn't play at all. But like Anthony Rendon hitting leadoff, like I understand like a new manager, like, Ron Washington's out there smoking his Camel cigarettes. He's like, I want to put my own stamp on this team. It's like, okay, but you don't want to stamp it stupid. Like that is like the idea behind stamping. You're putting your imprint on a team is one thing, but putting a stamp and stamping it stupid is another thing. Like, why would you put Anthony Rendon at leadoff? Like, that is more baffling than Kyle Schwarber hitting leadoff. Like, how is Anthony Rendon a leadoff hitter? And then Aaron Hicks? My God, man. The Angels are such a mess. Like that. And it's so clear. Like, if you look at their box scores, it's like, as soon as you get past the top 2 guys, everything else starts gelling. Like, it starts working. Like, when it gets to Mike Trout, and then Taylor Ward's even been hot this first weekend. Nolan Chanel has looked good. Logan O'Hoppe, it's like Zach Littell. Guys are working on the bottom of the lineup, and then you turn over the lineup to Anthony Rendon and Aaron Hicks. God, man. I mean, they're not even platooning either. It's like they are cemented in the leadoff and 2-hole. It's incredible. Anyway, yeah, it's good to have baseball back.
Yeah, like I said, it was great to have, and we'll celebrate that by complaining for the next hour or so.
We're gonna be complaining for the next 6 months.
There might be a positive one in there somewhere. I mean, there has to be one good week, I think. Maybe Ron Washington is just doing it by age. Maybe he's just literally lined everybody up. It's like 1 to 9, get in order your age. If you're young, just go sit at the back. You're not playing. You're not gonna hit the top of it. We're gonna stick the most money and the oldest people at the very front. That's all that matters. And that seems to be the approach. I think.
So he's doing his lineup like Social Security benefits. You guys, you're up here, man. You're the oldest up here.
If you're young, you get nothing. Get in the back and start paying up. Just pay the people in the front.
So, pay your taxes for the people in the front.
Oh, all right. So that was one issue already, Gray. We've already had lineup issues, and like we said during preseason, like the projected lineups that we're looking at, whether that's Fangraphs, Razzball, wherever that is, like it's like one person or a group of people just guessing, like, and then maybe that doesn't happen because Ron Washington is Ron Washington. I mean, what are some other narratives that have already shattered your world, Gray? I mean, I know you got plenty of rants, so we'll give you like 5 minutes here before we get into like news.
Okay. So here, by the time people listen to this, there'll be even more examples of this, but you have, like, in the preseason, you have people saying like, oh, AJ Puck, he looks incredible, right? And you have like people who are like saying like, oh, Jordan Hicks, he looks incredible. And then you have like Luis Severino, he looks incredible. And then you have like all these guys, right? So you have like all these different pitchers who are supposedly looking incredible coming into the year, like Chris Sale, Jared Jones, there's a bunch of them. Reese Olson, Casey Mize, who they haven't pitched yet. But you have like all these guys who look good, and like 50% of them get to the season and they look terrible. It's like this, and it's like this every year, really. Like you get gassed up, right? The helium you get helium into your veins, and you're like floating above the world, and you're looking down, you're like, oh my God, AJ Puck, he's gonna be so good. This is so incredible. I can't wait to draft him. And then you draft him and he can't find the strike zone. It's just like completely lost. I watched the entire AJ Puck start. I've never seen a guy so lost. Like there is literally at no point was he able to throw the ball over the plate. Like he basically, if he was going against a good team, I do like O'Neal Cruz, but let's be honest, the Pirates aren't exactly the best lineup in the world. But if he was going against a good team, that would have been so much more of a disaster than it actually was. And it was already a disaster. Don't get me wrong. And then you have, on the other hand, you have guys like Jordan Hicks, who looked great, but it's like it's just basically confirmation bias. If you say like, oh, spring training, it's so important. You look at like, Jared Jones, he looks great, but then you have like Luis Severino, who also looked terrible. Like, and he supposedly looked good in spring training. So it's like for every guy that looks good in spring training, you have another guy who looks bad and coming into the season, and another guy who looks good coming into the season. Like it doesn't really, like the spring training narratives, like just because we're only 4 games into the season, so I still remember these spring training narratives that I tried to ignore for the most part, but they still creep in. But you look at the you look at the opening weekend, and you have all these examples of guys who looked good in spring training who now look terrible again, and other guys who looked good in spring training who looked good. But it's like, there's no rhyme or reason, It's like, oh, okay, yeah, Jared Jones looked good. Yeah, he looked good. He did. I mean, I watched the start. He did look good. But on the other hand, you have AJ Puck or Luis Severino. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess basically what I'm saying is every year people try and take things away from spring training. And at the end of the day, it's like, you can't really take anything away from spring training ever.
Yeah. Anybody who's been listening to me for any kind of extended time knows I try to ignore just all of it. I just unless it's lineup or there's something maybe new being introduced, like velocity, I guess, for pitchers is something. If you go to Tampa Bay and you learn any of their pitches, then, that's news. But like, I just, it is what it is. Like most of the time it's just noise, looks good on a mound, not pitching to anybody. Like who doesn't look good as a Major League Baseball pitching on a mound to nobody? Like you should look good. If you look bad as a Major League pitcher on a mound pitching to nobody, maybe you shouldn't be a Major League pitcher. Like it I don't know. It always seemed kind of ridiculous to me unless there was some kind of information to back it up. Like again, velocity, spin rates, mixes, like there's things that can change certainly, but just like, oh, he looks good. What looks good? Like, is there more than he looks good? So yeah, I mean, it is
also on the hitter side too. Like there was a bunch of hitters who either looked really good or really bad in spring training. Like on the good side, it was like Dalton Varsho looked really good in the season. Christian Encarnacion Strand looked really good during the season. He did homer on Sunday, but I think that was like his first hit of the season, which is fine. I mean, this is like small sample size. Maybe there is something to like those breakouts in spring training for those guys. But I'm just saying, like, it doesn't really like have any correlation whatsoever. Just because and then on the other side of it, Adolis Garcia didn't look good at all in spring training. He had an over 40% strikeout rate, but he's looked fine during the season. It's there's really, for every guy you could say, you could take something away from what they did in spring training. You can look at, on the other hand, you can look at other guys who are you can't take anything away from what they did in spring training. So it's really just confirmation bias, and you're just cherry picking the guys you want to believe actually did something in spring training that matter. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, this is just kind of confirmation bias, or, just it picking whichever one happens to fit what happens to the players you like or you don't like. I mean, Driveline. You could say Driveline. Oh, well, Shane Bieber went to Driveline. He got a mile per hour back, and he looked great. Yeah, so did Luis Severino. He looked good, but there's definitely guys with Driveline.
Oh, the best is Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt went to Driveline, and everyone's talking about his exit velocities in the first couple games of the season. He's also, I don't have his age in front of me, but he's obviously on the older side. So let's get to May and see how well what he did in February matters. Yeah. Paul Goldschmidt looks good in the first 3 games of the season. Just wait until he's played 40 games out of the first 43, and he's starting to have a nagging hamstring injury, and things are sore when he gets out of bed in the morning. Let's see then how good the Driveline narrative looks from February.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Goldschmidt's 36, I believe. I mean, right. we could have gone to high school together, which means I know that swinging a bat hard is probably going to mess up his back over a long time. So, we'll see what happens as the season goes along. But I do like Goldschmidt. I don't even think he needs to really. I don't think he needs to do more than he did last year. He just needs to stay where he was, really. But even that, again, may not happen at 36. Let's move off of the narratives. We've already discussed them. We've talked about them. We've ran them all down already in the preseason, and we know they don't matter that terribly much sometimes. Let's talk about some news. A couple of bad ones right off the bat. Let's talk about some injuries. Royce Lewis, he had 2 plate appearances. His very first one of the season was a home run, and then he has a quad injury that's going to cost him at least a month. We don't really maybe an occasional curse word slips out here or there, but it takes a lot for me not to curse in this moment, because he looks so good every time he's on the field, Gray, and it just keeps happening.
I feel like Royce Lewis is made of straw from the waist down. he's so brittle. I don't really I don't know, man. I honestly I feel like saying a guy. So I wrote an overrated post for Royce Lewis in the preseason. I wouldn't have drafted Royce Lewis anywhere close to where he was going in drafts. He was going, I think, top 50, which I found to be just totally insane. But it's the amount of injuries he has on his legs. I honestly, I don't know if there's really a fix for him. I honestly, I don't know. I mean, whatever he's doing is not working. I don't know, man. I feel kind of bad, because it's he does seem incredibly talented. I get the allure, but you have to imagine that he's good for maybe, I want to say 80 games. And honestly, I feel like that might be a little bit optimistic. I would probably put the over under at 80 games this year for him, which is that's terrible. I mean, it's really bad, especially for a guy who is going in the top 50. If he were going around 150 overall, I might have even been interested, but at 50 overall, it was just the preseason hype for him, like I just couldn't understand it really. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I had him inside my top 50, and it's because again, he looks so good when he's on the field, Gray. Like, and this is an acknowledged weakness of mine in both baseball and football. Like, if a guy's really good, I can look past a lot of things because they're just so freaking talented, and Royce Lewis is among that group. I mean, he's young. I just figured like they can get right mix of like stretching, hydrating, whatever it is that he doesn't do, and get him ready for a season. And it hasn't happened. I don't know if he needs to be in yoga or they need to hook him up to an IV every game. I don't know, but I would love to see him stay healthy for a full season one time.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, like in your defense, you look at a guy like Louis Robert going into last year. I had similar issues with Louis Robert, and then he stayed healthy the whole year. So it's like, if you draft the talent, sometimes it does work. But Royce Lewis seems like, I mean, he really his legs. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's like missing a knee, maybe a couple of knees. So it's not a great base to be starting from. Really feel bad for him, but we can move on. I don't think there's not really a fantasy fallout here, other than people in the Twins lineup moving up. His replacement is probably Willie Castro or Kyle Farmer, and neither of those are really going to be interesting outside of very deep leagues. Justin Steele, who I think both of us and plenty of our listeners have shares of, he has having a very good start, comes off the mound, fields a ball, hamstring injury. He's going to miss a month, Gray, and that makes me a very sad Cubs fan because he was the only really arm that I was counting on to be any good for us at all this season, and now we don't have one.
Yeah, I mean, you really see how shallow the Cubs rotation is once you take like Steele out of there. It's like now Kyle Hendricks is their number one. Yeah, not great. I don't know. We're recording this before Shota has his first start of the season, so I mean he might look good. I have high hopes for him, so I don't know. But yeah, that's more of a Cubs. This isn't.
I'm just complaining.
This isn't Cubs chat. So I think Ben Brown was brought up. He looks pretty bad. I don't know if I'd go anywhere near him outside of NL only. I think even in our NL only league, I think I got him for $1 FAAB, which shows you how. I mean, and no one goes for really cheap in NL only or AL only. So yeah, it shows you kind of how. It shows you how little people think of Ben Brown, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I took a flyer on him for $1. I'm not starting him this week though, so we'll see. I don't even know if the Cubs are starting him. In the I think on Saturday, I think it was, he came in I think in the middle of the game. I think he pitched like an inning or two. He looked bad, whatever it was. He didn't look good. So yeah, I'm probably avoiding that whole situation in most leagues. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But yeah, it stinks with Justin Steele. I mean, that's like the polar opposite of the Royce Lewis thing, where like, I mean, even though you can't predict injuries, Royce Lewis felt like more of an injury risk, where Justin Steele, I mean, that was just a total fluky thing where it's like, that's just bad luck. There's like nothing you can do about that. That's like when I was saying, I don't know if I said this on the podcast or if I said this in real life. I don't know. Some of these podcasts go for so long that it's sort of the same thing as me saying on the podcast and saying in real life. But, I was listening to something this offseason talking about how like poker is like the perfect combination of luck and skill, because you still like as much skill as you can have, you still need the cards to come your way. And I was thinking how that sort of sounds a lot like fantasy baseball too. It's like you can be really skilled in how you draft and your knowledge of the players, But still, at the end of the day, things like Justin Steele's injury happen, and you're like, you can't predict that. I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do about injuries. If we could predict them all, we'd win a lot more money, quite honestly, because you know who not to take. One more injury, and then we'll get into more, some other topics here. And this again isn't really anything to do, but Jordan Lawler has to have thumb surgery. He's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks. He was in the minors, but you may have been holding on to him because he was, presumably an early call up, potentially. Now he's pretty much safe to drop in, other than deep NL onlys and unlimited IL situations. Just wanted to bring that up in case somebody is holding on to Jordan Lawler. Nothing else to really action there. Jordan Montgomery signs in Arizona. I think this happened maybe right after our last podcast, but he should be ready by mid to late April, Gray. He just slots in kind of where Jordan Montgomery slots in as pitchers go, right?
Yeah, no, totally. I think they said, I believe they said April 21st. April 19th or April 21st was when they're expecting him back. So, a couple weeks. I expect him to be totally fine. I like Jordan Montgomery a lot. He's around an 8 K per 9, solid command, usually under a 3.5 ERA. He's a good ratio guy from, third week of April to the end of the season, maybe 150 innings ish. He's good though. I think he's a solid number 3. I look at him kind of like an NL's version of Chris Bassett.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think the strikeouts could probably be a little bit better than maybe Chris Bassett, who didn't have exactly a great start to his season. But yeah, I would say that's probably the right area for him. Let's talk about some of the FAAB guys that you were bidding on in your leagues, Gray, and went in your leagues, and then we'll kind of touch on them a little bit more in depth. I think, among the top ads across most leagues this week were Victor Scott, Brady Singer, Oswaldo Cabrera, let's Trey Lipscomb. Let's talk about, I guess let's start with Brady Singer. He's not available in any of my leagues because I drafted him, but you said basically all your leagues he was added as a pickup this week. What do you think about Brady Singer, and a guy I know you liked last year? And I'm going to be honest, I don't remember what your thoughts were coming into this season.
Well, I was out coming into this year because he burned me so bad last year. But I wrote a sleeper post for him. I believe it was last year or the year before. I have liked Brady Singer a lot in previous years. Coming into this year, he was coming off of such an awful 2023 with terrible strikeouts. Command was a little wonky. His even though his ERA was a little bit inflated versus his xFIP because of his BABIP was a little bit high, which is so he was a little bit unlucky last year with his ERA, but it was still bad. I mean, it's still even if he was luck neutral, it wouldn't have been a great year last year. So I was just it's if you're looking at you need to draft 6 pitchers and you're looking at 100 of them. You don't need to take guys that you have question marks about unless the league is crazy deep and you're just taking flyers. So I didn't get into a situation where Brady Singer was really calling out to me like a songbird, so to speak. He did look good in his first start though. I mean, I supposedly he added a new pitch. I don't know, man. He was going in my FAAB leagues, he was going for $130 plus, which feels a little high to me when you have that's a 15-team mixed league, to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. So a 15-team mixed league, you do have it's hard to find great starters on waivers, but you do have solid ish starters. You should be able to find guys that you can pick up. It's not completely barren on waivers. So the fact that Brady Singer went for that much, people are assuming that's you're assuming he's going to be like, a start every time guy and is like completely fixed from last year, which I mean, maybe, I don't know. It just feels super early to say that though. Like I don't know. I mean, you drafted him, so you have probably more positive feelings on him than I do. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the new pitch. He's throwing, some kind of sweeper is what they're saying. And he's also mixing it in with like some version of his old slider or some kind of cutter. So he has, if you go look at like the numbers, it's probably going to show one slider, but he has 2 or 3 sliders that he's throwing, and he's throwing the fastball along with it. The fastball is at least up from like the low point of last year, which is good to see. It was kind of, he was going so late, and we've seen what he can be at different times in his career. 2022, he had the 3.23 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, over 153 innings. So you just get him in the right pitch mix, and things can go right. I don't expect him to be a 37% K guy, but I do think, I look at FAAB differently than you do, because 10% to me isn't a big deal in a $1,000 FAAB league, because there's so many guys that go for, $10 to $30 that you can kind of just spread that out through the season. You can take a few, 10, 15% shots on guys. If he just stays on your roster for a few months, it's probably worth 10%. Whether you can start him every game, that remains to be seen. This was at home versus Minnesota. It's not a matchup you're exactly fearing.
Right. Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. It's like it was a good matchup, and I think he's about to have another good matchup. So the results are going to be skewed. Excuse me. They're not going to be skewed. Hopefully, they won't be skewered. They will be skewed. They will be skewered if he throws a gyro ball. Da-da-cha. No, the results will be skewed after next game because he's throwing another good matchup. So then it's like, so what I'm saying is basically I want to see him throw against a good team. If he throws against a good team and looks really good, then I might come around a little bit more. But as of right now, like I would pick up Brady Singer. He's throwing like 50%. I think, well, you mentioned the sweeper. So the slider percentage is probably a little bit, it's not exactly accurate, but I mean, he can't, it's like, he's not throwing fastballs at all. At a certain point, you would think he'd have to throw a fastball. Right now, he's like barely 40% fastball. Anyway, I would pick him up and I would hold him. He should have a good start next time out because it's a good matchup. So I would hold him for that. And then, go from there. If he looks good in his start after where he actually has a tough matchup, then I'm starting to, then I'd start to come around a little bit more. But as of this point, to me, he's like a streamer still in most 12-team mixed leagues and shallower. And a 15-team, obviously, he's going to be, at this point, he's going to be rostered because, he looked great and he's about to have a good start. He's about to have a good matchup.
Yeah, 15-team must add. 12-team, again, I already own him in pretty much every 12-team I'm in, but you can add him in 12-team. It looks like he's lined up for the White Sox. That's obviously a nice matchup. The one after that will be either Houston or the Mets, so we might get a little bit more of a challenge there. But again, you have to add these guys now. We can't wait till we see 3 more starts and be like, okay, now go spend a third of your FAAB on him. I think add him now and then, monitor the situation. But yeah, I've always liked Brady Singer. I know you were hurt last year, so I get it. Trey Lipscomb, he's filling in a little bit while Nick Senzel is hurt, which is, more of a statement of where Nick Senzel sits most of the time in his baseball career. We're talking about Royce Lewis. Nick Senzel is basically like Royce Lewis, except I don't know that Nick Senzel ever really looked anywhere close to as good as Royce Lewis does on the baseball field.
Nick Senzel is Royce Lewis if he can't get health coverage.
But Trey Lipscomb is getting playing time, Gray. He has a home run, a stolen base. He's hitting 429, and he's only had 8 plate appearances. Is this somebody that is worth picking up, or, is this just he got off to a nice start and good for him?
I was kind of surprised that I bid on Trey Lipscomb in every league. Like I was all in for Trey Lipscomb this past Sunday for FAAB. I was kind of surprised at how flat the bids were. No one seems really that interested. I think I'm all by myself here. I mean, he did, like, last year. He he had 10 homers, 4 steals, and hit 284 with an 18% strikeout rate in AA. Obviously, it was AA, and he's 23 years old. So, that's not necessarily the best thing, but I'm assuming he went to college, so he didn't start in single A until he was 22. So, there's obviously he's a little bit older for a AA player, even though he looked really good. I mean, Senzel is whatever, right? So let's assume Senzel, he broke his thumb. Let's assume he takes 6 weeks to get healthy. Let's assume he stays healthy after that, which is, ludicrous, but it is April Fool's. So let's just say Senzel stays healthy even when he returns in 6 weeks. That gives Trey Lipscomb 6 weeks to prove himself. And if he does, Senzel's whatever. Like, if Lipscomb looks good, he stays in the lineup. There's no one in that lineup that needs to be in the middle of it. So right now he's batting 9th, but he could easily move up to like the 4 hole or even the 3 hole, like Jesse Winker, Joey Menendez, Joey Gallo. That's nothing. There's nothing in the middle of that lineup that really is stopping anyone from jumping into it. So Trey Lipscomb comes up. If he hits well in the month of April, he's not leaving the lineup, and he's going to move up to the middle of it. That sounds good for a basically free guy off of waivers. Like, I picked him up in one league for $14 out of 1,000, and the only other the bid behind was only $8. So that's like nothing. I mean, $14 and $1,000 FAAB is basically like free. Like, that's like basically saying no one is gonna really want this guy. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of intrigued. We'll see what happens. But right now is the time to get him, because if he gets hot next week, if he's still on waivers in leagues, next week he's going to go for $50+, maybe $100 if he stays hot this week and he moves up the lineup. So I'm just saying, now's the time to get him if you're going to get him.
All right, we'll monitor him for next week. I know that in my leagues, he was actually not picked up. So we'll see what he goes for next week if this continues. I think just hitting at the bottom of the Nationals lineup is kind of enough to bury a guy, unfortunately. But we've seen, like Lane Thomas last year just kind of came out of nowhere and climbed his way all the way up to the top of the lineup. So it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. It's an interesting grab here. And he's not completely without prospect pedigree, although he's pretty low in the system. So we'll see what happens there. Victor Scott, he's filling in for Dylan Carlson. I mean, are you more or less interested in him?
I'm more or less interested in Victor Scott compared to who? Lipscomb?
Yeah.
No, I'm more interested in Scott. But also Victor Scott was going for like $200-300 in $1,000 FAAB this week. So it's like I was more interested in Victor Scott, but also the price is a lot steeper. I didn't go. I don't have Victor Scott in any league. I wasn't about to go that crazy for him for FAAB. I think I bid like maybe $50 out of 1,000, and like I said, he went for like over 200. So I was nowhere near him. My big problem with Victor Scott, I think, and which doesn't seem to be anyone else's problem. So I'll say that I seem to be alone in this problem. I think Carlson returns. Like, I know Carlson isn't good, but Carlson returns. He's not going to just sit on the bench. And if Victor Scott is hitting, if he has like a 30% strikeout rate like he has right now and is hitting like under 200 as he is right now, Victor Scott's not going to stay in the lineup. If any, he's probably going to get sent down to the minors. So, yeah, I mean, I like Victor Scott. Obviously, the upside's insane. He probably has like 60 plus steal speed this year. So it's real. Like, he's serious when it comes to speed, but I bet he's not starting in like 3 weeks time for the Cardinals. That would be my guess. Would be he's up for a couple weeks and then they're either gonna send him down or he's gonna platoon. And it's just you can't really have a platoon player in a weekly league, which is what these FAAB leagues are that I'm talking about. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not in on Victor Scott. I like him. I get it, but I'm not willing to spend as much as it's going to take to get him.
Yeah, I think he was actually owned in my leagues. He got drafted, but I can see where the interest comes from. There's certainly plenty of speed, but it is kind of a one tool guy. So you really need to have that vacancy where you're like, I need a ton of speed and still take the risk, as you mentioned, that he's going to maintain his playing time. There's some guys you can move around, like Alec Burleson doesn't necessarily need to play all the time. But at the same time, like, DH is going to be kind of shifted amongst any number of guys there. And I don't think Victor Scott falls in that group. So it's very possible that he becomes kind of a part-timer or gets sent back down once Carlson's healthy. We'll have to monitor that, but I understand what you're saying in regards to overspending for, what could be potentially game-changing speed, but your team kind of has to have that need. Steven Matz had a really nice outing. He was sitting in the mid-90s. I've always kind of liked Steven Matz. He produces when he's healthy. He's he's just doesn't give you a lot of innings, but 5 1/3, 3 strikeouts. I mean, you could do worse, I guess, than Steven Matz.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Steven Matz had an 8.5 K per 9 and a 3.86 ERA. There's going to be guys probably that are much worse on your team than, what Matz will end up doing. And the fact that he was sitting at like 95, 96 and Sunday's game, I don't know. I'm interested a little bit in deeper leagues in watching. Like, we were talking about Brady Singer earlier, like Steven Matz or Brady Singer. I don't know if there's going to be that much of a difference. I mean, Singer obviously has more strikeout potential, possibly, but I mean, he's also he hasn't been good. So I don't know. I like Steven Matz though as like a flyer, but that's what I was saying kind of too with like, people spending a decent amount on Brady Singer. It's like guys like Steven Matz they're a dime a dozen, really. Like guys like Steven Matz in most leagues, at least in most mixed leagues, at least. So yeah, but he is, at the end of the day, he is Steven Matz, which is like, it's fine. I mean, I'm not, trying to pretend like Steven Matz is going to be an ace. He's more or less what he is, but what he is may not, it could be, somewhat productive / valuable in deeper leagues.
Yeah, I think so. And I actually had to make a call in a league, 15-team deeper dynasty, where it was like, do I want Steven Matz or Kyle Hendricks as I faced a roster restriction there? And I actually chose Steven Matz, which seems kind of crazy. Hendricks had a good season last year, but I think Steven Matz is just going to give you 100, 150 very solid innings. And even when Hendricks is good, he just doesn't have strikeouts. So just to give you an idea of where I'm sitting on Steven Matz. Let's talk about some guys who didn't have great first starts here, Gray. Aaron Nola, he did have a tough first opponent in Atlanta, but 4 1/3, 7 earned runs, 2 homers, 1 walk, only 3 strikeouts. Velocity was down here, and it was down at the end of last season. I think we were both off the Nola train, I believe, and this is just kind of, maybe it's confirmation bias, but I don't like it.
Yeah, I was so off of Aaron Nola. I watched that Braves Phillies game with Nola and Fried, and Fried got a little bit robbed on a strike call. Like, it was called a ball, it was a strike. But as I was saying to people on Razzball, like, he was in the position where one pitch could hurt him because of all his other pitches weren't great. So Max Fried, I was out on Max Fried this year too. Max Fried didn't look as bad as Aaron Nola. Like, Aaron Nola looked awful. Like, I would be absolutely, if you did not listen, if you did not heed our advice and you drafted Aaron Nola, I would be looking to sell Aaron Nola to someone who thought maybe a bounce back could be happening potentially in the future. But Max Fried, on the other hand, I don't have great feelings on Max Fried either. Like, he got robbed on that one pitch, but he also made that mess around that pitch as well. Like, he loaded the base, like, he loaded bases. He did get squeezed, but he also, like, he didn't look great, So I don't know, with like Nolan Fried, that game was like, I didn't want any part of either of those guys. So I was like, yay, a little bit Schadenfreude, but yeah, I mean, Nola I have real concern about. Fried I have less concerns about because of he didn't look that awful, but he still had the arm issue last year. I would be worried about both of them, to be honest, but more worries obviously about Aaron Nola.
Yeah, I'm worried about Nola. Fried, the velocity was fine. That was, the thing that I wanted to look at here, especially early in the season. He really struggled after that call, and even leading up to that call, hitting his spots. I mean, like, both these guys, like, they couldn't hit a freaking beach ball with a baseball during this game at certain times. So it was just a weird game. I'm giving Fried a pass again. Velocity was fine. The stuff looked good, which it feels weird to say this because he obviously didn't go as far in the game, and like, it looks awful. But I thought Fried's stuff looked fine. Nola's stuff looked bad, even though he was still kind of in the zone where he needed to be. So worried about Aaron Nola. Also worried about this next guy, which is Joe Musgrove. 2 starts this season. He has 8 1/3 innings, 9 earned run, 5 Ks, 3 walks. Velo's down. He's gone very heavy slider, kind of old Joe Musgrove like. I don't like what we're seeing with Musgrove. I know he was very good last year, but then he got injured, and that's what I'm worried about. I don't know that he's healthy.
Right. Yeah. He was another guy I was out on. Like I said, even earlier this show, there's like, out of 100 pitchers, you only have to draft 6 of them six-ish. And Musgrove was one of those guys where, like, his injuries last year had me out on him this year. So I was totally out. Nothing I saw from Musgrove this weekend made me think that I should have been in. Like, he didn't look good, man. I wasn't impressed. I'll say that. I mean, he has issues. I don't know, man. I'd probably be selling low on him as well, but yeah, it depends on what you can get. Like, trades are like that with just about everyone. It's like, it depends on what your return is, but yeah, Musgrove, I don't know. Yeah, I'm out on Musgrove as well.
Yeah, if you could get draft day value for Nola and Musgrove, I would take it right now. I don't know if you can. Bailey Ober, he was also pretty bad in his first start. Basically, see Max Fried, because it was the same thing. Like, velocity was fine, couldn't hit his spots. He's just it wasn't there. It wasn't his day.
Yeah, no, completely. With his game is really command too. So if his command's off, then he's gonna have a terrible game like he did, because he doesn't have overpowering stuff. So it's like it's command or nothing. And usually his command is totally fine. So there's like no concerns that his stuff isn't overpowering. But obviously, the command wasn't there in his start. So yeah, I still like him though. I'm still in on, Bailey Ober. I feel like he's totally fine. I would actually be buying on Ober if I could.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I actually I got a very low ball offer for Bailey Ober in one mixed league. I think it was Bailey Ober for JD Martinez. Obviously, I turned that down. But yeah, I mean, if you can reach out and maybe get Ober at a discount following his bad start to the season, I don't mind that at all. I think better days are coming. Same with this next guy, which is Zach Eflin. He went 5 2/3 versus Toronto, 6 earned, 1 walk, 5 Ks. I think Eflin's going to be fine though.
Yeah. Eflin is another one where I'm like, I'm not that concerned. I watched Eflin. I watched a lot of the Eflin start. I feel like he got a little bit unlucky. His command was fine. He just, he just looked a little bit rusty, but that was first game of the season type rust. I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like the Rays are almost always the first team to pull a guy, even too early for us sometimes. And I think they just left him in too long in this start. I mean, he came in the 6th, got a ground out. Kevin Biggio homered off of him. That should be a pretty clear sign if Kevin Biggio hits anything. Just be like, okay, he's done for the day. Let's get a new pitcher in here. But they left him in. Vlad homered and then put some people on base. And then, Sean Armstrong came in and I think gave up another run, but on his tab. But Eflin's going to be fine. Everything looked good up until that 6th inning. All right, great. Let's move over to a FAAB version of everybody's favorite game, Scientific Fact, Sex Panther, or I Don't Believe You. Gray, I'm going to do this more for you than for our listeners, because I feel like our listeners understand the game, and you, after playing this like 7 times, still don't understand the game.
I have no idea.
Scientific fact: you believe in what they're doing, they're going to be good. Sex Panther, 60% of the time, it works every time. They're going to do it 60% of the time, and then other 40% of the time, you're probably going to hate them, or I don't believe you. And obviously, that one should be pretty clear. Let's start with a guy you'd already mentioned, Jared Jones. Had some hype out of spring training, came out 5 2/3, 3 earned, 2 walks, 10 Ks. I mean, he had a very nice start. He went for FAAB across all our leagues. How much are you buying into Jared Jones in the Scientific Fact, Sex Panther, or I Don't Believe You?
Yeah, I guess it depends on when you were drafting. It's kind of interesting to hear you say Jared Jones was going in your FAAB when he was the one who was rostered in my leagues, and you're saying Brady Singer was rostered in your leagues. That's kind of
because I own them.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I'm just not in enough leagues with B-Don. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, Jared Jones, I'm going to say Sex Panther. I like him. I think he's definitely got something. Like, he's better than he was better than I was expecting, but I don't think Jared Jones is necessarily the answer to people's like complete problems with their rotations. If they have problems with their rotations, they probably shouldn't if they were drafting according to me. But you know what? Some people don't listen and they go and they draft Aaron Nolas. But Jared Jones, I think is going to be good, but he was going against a very weak team. Like the Marlins, the Rockies, the A's, the White Sox are obviously good teams to stream against everywhere. Even I think you can even stream against the Rockies in course. But anyway, that's a side note. But Jared Jones, he was going against the Marlins, who have like Arise, Tim Anderson. I don't think De La Cruz. Like, there's a bunch of Avisail Garcia. There's a bunch of guys in that lineup who swing at everything. Like, they just Arise. Obviously, he swings at everything and he gets a lot of singles, so that's fine for his game. But Tim Anderson swings at everything and misses a lot. I mean, there's that lineup is not a patient lineup. Even Jazz Chisholm, who to a certain extent, I like some of these guys for fantasy, the ones I'm mentioning from the Marlins lineup, but they are not a patient team. So Jared Jones is like the perfect mix to go against a team like that, like, because he looks like he doesn't have great command. But when you don't have great command, but your stuff is good, and you're going against a team like the Marlins, it's sort of the perfect mix for him. So it'll be interesting to see how Jared Jones looks against a more patient team, because if you throw like Jared Jones against, say, like the Phillies, I think he's going to get killed. Like, I really would worry a lot about Jared Jones there. But Sex Panther, because he did look good. I mean, I would roster him for sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right area. I like him from a stuff standpoint. The fastball slider is very nice. The control is the concern. I don't know if that lasts. And I mean, it's not like he went out and threw an 8-inning shutout. It was a lot of strikeouts. And then he kind of got beat up towards the end a little bit. So we'll monitor that. But yeah, I think Jared Jones fits into the pickups. Would you rather have him or Brady Singer?
I would go Jared Jones. Singer.
Okay. You mentioned Brady Singer, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the matchup. Like, if Singer's going against the White Sox and Jones is going against the Yankees, I want Singer. But yeah, in general, in a vacuum, I'd go Jones just because of the upside.
Yeah, I will say, if we're looking at Singer, like, we know he gets a lot of matchups against the Tigers, Guardians, Twins, and White Sox. That's a pretty good place to be in regards to just, knowing you can start him against division at least. So just from a divisional standpoint, I'm going to go with Singer there, since Jared Jones might actually have to face occasional real offenses. But, I think it's kind of one way or the other. It may depend on whether you need Ks or, maybe I think Singer's probably safer for innings. Moving on to our next guy, Michael Conforto, 17 plate appearances, 2 home runs, 6 runs, 5 RBIs, 5 Ks, 2 walks. Please stop me from being dragged into Michael Conforto again, Gray. Please, please throw me a lifeline.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I think he's healthy, and I'm going to say scientific fact. I mean, I'm sorry. I actually bid on him in FAAB, and FAAB felt very flat for him too. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's just healthy because it's early in the season, and as the season wears on, it's going to wear him down. So, I mean, that's possible. But right now, he looks good. I would pick him up. A worst case scenario is he's just a hot potato and you drop him, in a couple weeks. But yeah, I don't know. I'm in on Michael Conforto. I'm sorry to say.
Thanks for just confirming my FAAB spending, Gray. That's, if you can't talk me off the ledge, at least just shove me over the end. I have shares. I've bid on them in FAAB. Haven't helped us. Nick Martini, he has 9 plate appearances, 2 home runs, 3 runs, 7 RBIs. He's hitting 500 right now. Guess who dropped him in NL only for roster cuts, Gray? This guy.
I saw, like, I get emails for people for waiver moves, and I saw you dropped him. I gotta be honest, that was a terrible move.
It was a terrible move, wasn't it?
I mean, he's on the strong side of a Reds platoon in the, like, he's in a good park. You had to have had someone else to drop. I saw that, and usually you make good moves, and I was like, is B Don? Did B Don hit his head?
So yeah, I was still kind of waiting when that decision had to be made. I was waiting on a Xavier Edwards decision in regards to whether he was going to make the team or not. And then he got hurt. And so,
my God, man.
So not
Xavier
only did I make
Edwards?
the wrong decision, I also could have just moved Xavier Edwards to the IL and kept Nick Martini because it's CBS and they do, our weird IL things. So I thought about actually getting on there and pulling the old like, hey, Scott, could you just reverse this transaction now? But I didn't want to be that guy. So, I lost Nick Martini. I tried to bid on him to get him back because I was like, as soon as I dropped him, I'm like, this is stupid. What are you doing? And it was stupid. I shouldn't have dropped him. But, he is a platoon player. So hopefully that makes me feel a little bit better. And if he hits 35 home runs, I'm going to feel like the worst person ever.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely the Reds. He's the Scott Schliebler of the Reds team this year. He's the one who's gonna Nick Martini's gonna have the random 30 homer season for the Reds.
The Brandon Drury year.
Yeah, he's their starting all-star. He's their one all-star representative. Honestly, this might make you feel better. I think Nick Martini is at best a Sex Panther, and probably I don't believe you, but we'll see. I mean, it's a good park, so I'm not opposed to trying Nick Martini out if you're in like a daily league and you can platoon him. The league I'm talking about with Beat On, that was an NL only league. In an NL only league, it's unforgivable to drop Nick Martini. I'm sorry, Beat On. I love you, but that's a terrible move.
He was a free agent when I picked him up.
and you should have never dropped him. Okay, anyway, let's move on.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll move on from Nick Martini and my terrible, terrible life decisions. I mean, in fairness, he's a 34-year-old who's never stayed in the majors. Like, come on. Oswaldo Cabrera, 17 plate appearances, 2 home runs, 3 runs, 6 RBIs. He's hitting .438. This is another guy I added for free off of free agency, and I didn't drop him, Gray. So, Oswaldo Cabrera, where are you fitting him in our Anchorman game?
Okay, so I'll say Sex Panther for now. It's hard to say scientific fact for anyone because especially guys who don't have any track record whatsoever. But Oswaldo Cabrera, I like a lot. I bid on him in every league this week to try and get him. I don't think I actually succeeded in that, but I did bid. Like I like Oswaldo Cabrera. I just like Aaron Boone is like one of the bigger dummies managing a baseball team. And if they go to John Birdie instead of Cabrera, like, I don't know why they traded for Birdie. Obviously they traded for him for a reason. Like, they knew DJ LeMahieu was hurt, so they needed someone like they needed Birdie to replace that. But Oswaldo Cabrera, they have, like, just play Oswaldo Cabrera. As long as they're playing Oswaldo Cabrera, I like him a lot. I want to almost say scientific fact, but I'll sit on Sex Panther for now.
Yeah, I think I'm in that same group. Like, I would like to say scientific fact. I'm going to go Sex Panther until the playing time kind of normalizes, and he's striking out a lot too. So we'll see if he can get some of those down a little bit. But yeah, I like Oswaldo Cabrera. If he can play every day, I definitely think there's some fantasy value to be had here. Also put in some FAAB bids for him. So yeah, I'm with you in regards to go ahead and add in him. I also don't understand the Birdie move. Like, they've got like Jorbit down in the minors that he can come up if they just need like a guy to fill in and play backup infield and run every now and then. Like, I that's all John Birdie is. He's like a backup utility guy who can run. Like, you have that. What? That's all over the place. I don't know. Next up, Matt Chapman. He has 18 plate appearances, 2 home runs. He's in 289, 4 runs, 6 RBIs. I feel like we saw this from Matt Chapman last year.
Yeah, exactly. I don't believe Matt Chapman. We can move on.
Yeah. Zack Littell, 6 innings, 4 hits, 0 earned, 6 Ks, 2 walks.
again, like you mentioned earlier, Rays, right? I mean, it's the Rays. So how terrible could it be? I'll say scientific fact because we've seen the Rays turn pitchers into being good. So Zack Littell, Littell, I don't know. Zack Littell, if he's on the Rays, I'm interested. That's all.
Yeah, so he came over to the Rays last year. They taught him the cutter, and he was a sub-4 ERA guy once they joined him. So yeah, I like Littell. I think you go ahead and grab him and see if the Rays can pull some more magic out of their back ends, which I believe they will. And he'll probably get hurt at some point once you do buy in, because that's the Rays way. Garret Crochet, 6 innings, 8 Ks, 5 hits, 1 earned run versus Detroit. You know, I think there was a lot of varying opinions on Crochet coming in draft season. Looked very good in this first outing.
Yeah, no, completely. I'll say Sex Panther though, because it was the Tigers. The Tigers are another, like, there's a lot of bad lineups in the major leagues. The Tigers are not a great team. Crochet looked very good. But he's going to be on the White Sox, so limited wins. I think on Razzball, I said something like his line for the year could be something like, 2 wins and 16 losses and like a 3.5 ERA. Like he could have like a really solid year, but he's not going to get any wins. It's going to be mostly about the strikeouts, and maybe his ERAs will be okay. I don't trust him fully though, so I'll say Sex Panther.
Yeah, I mean, he had the Tommy John in 2022, so in theory, like, this is when he should start looking good, but I'm with you. Sex Panther, it was a good matchup. Let's wait and see that he's, can keep this going, and like you said, it's a terrible team and a not great park to be in, so unfortunately, that holds his upside back. Luis Campusano, 23 plate appearances, 391, 1 home run, 4 runs, 6 RBIs. Are you dropping your second catcher and picking up Luis Campusano if he wasn't already owned, Gray?
Oh, he was absolutely rostered in all my leagues. I don't believe Campusano though. He's fine as a second catcher, but maybe a first catcher in like a 15 team. If you're in a 15 team, 1 catcher league, then sure. I'm fine with him there. I don't think he's really, like, maybe if you have a terrible catcher as you're in a 1 catcher, 12 team mixed league, maybe you take a flyer just to see if he can stay hot for like a couple weeks. But in general, he's kind of boring. He's like a 280 hitter, which is good, but he has very little power, no speed, obviously, but he's a catcher. So that, that goes without saying, but yeah, very little power. I don't know. I mean, unless he's added power, because he does have a good average. He should have a good average. So yeah, but I'm not that interested.
Okay. Would you drop him over Logan O'Hop?
No.
Bo Naylor?
No.
Okay. So he's still kind of sitting where he was, which is like catcher, he's a high-end mid catcher too. Like that's where he's still sitting for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like Campusano is like I want to say around the maybe the 15th to 17th best catcher. Somewhere. Around which is like, a not great 1 catcher in a 12 or 15 team mixed league, or first, like a higher second catcher.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, how about David Fry? You mentioned Campusano owned across leagues. David Fry has 11 plate appearances, 1 stolen base, 3 runs, 3 RBIs. He's hitting .667 with a couple of walks and no strikeouts. Is David Fry an acceptable second catcher? Just he doesn't seem very exciting, and he's not getting a whole lot of playing time, but has looked good so far, Gray. No strikeouts.
Yeah, no, Yeah, he seems like, I mean, maybe a second catcher in a 15-team league. He was probably unrostered as of last week. He's probably rostered now, but if he's not, yeah, I could see picking him up in a 15-team mixed league. He's probably just an AL only catcher. David Fry looks to me like a guy who's got some power, probably going to hit for, not a great average. And is also he's a backup to Bo Naylor. So, and a backup to other, he might back up at DH. He could potentially DH or catch, but he's on the bench most days. So yeah, he's a weaker second catcher.
All right. Would you rather have David Fry or Jake Rogers?
Jake Rogers.
Okay. Same here. Shane Bieber had 6 innings, 4 hits, 11 Ks, 1 walk, but it was at Oakland. Is Shane Bieber ace back, or are you using this to sell him as high as possible?
I would be selling Shane Bieber. He was another guy who I was totally out on Shane Bieber coming into the year. It's like the A's, really? It's just like whatever people can fit into their narratives. It's like, oh, Shane Bieber was such a great steal in drafts. He was going way too low. And then you get him and you get a good start. And it's like, yeah, I told you Shane Bieber is going to be great. And they just ignore the fact that it was against the A's. And it's like, yeah, I mean, every pitcher is going to look good against the A's. And if they don't, then there's other issues. So I don't know. I was out on Shane Bieber. I'm not suddenly in on him. His velocity, while up from last year, is still kind of like, he's throwing like 92 miles per hour. I don't know, man. I mean, he seems fine for because the Guardians, like you were mentioning with the AL Central, like the Guardians he should have a lot of good matchups. The Royals, the White Sox. I'm not even really worried about the Twins. I mean, there's a lot of good matchups, and then you throw in the A's, the Angels. There's a ton of good teams for pitchers to face. So I don't mind them in certain scenarios, but for the most part, I would be selling Shane Bieber.
All right. It sounds like I like him a little bit more than you do. I don't expect him to get back to, his dominant ace ways, but I expect him to be, a strong pitcher for most of the season. At Seattle next start, so you can potentially get another good start out of him before you move him, and then he gets the White Sox. So next couple starts, still pretty strong. Maybe get a few good ones, and if you're in Gray's camp, then sell him because his stock should be pretty high after 3, fairly straightforward starts, I think, here. Frankie Montas had 6 innings, 4 hits, no earned, and 4 Ks. No, I don't know that he ever hit the levels that Shane Bieber hit, but Frankie Montas at one point was a very good pitcher. Is he back to being a good pitcher, Gray?
Yeah, Frankie Montas, I will say that his velocity was way up. I think it's over 95. He had he has a terrible park. Whatchamacallit, this in Cincy, it's not going to be a good park. So I wouldn't expect a sub 4 ERA from him on the year because he does, he gives up some homers. He tends to allow homers. Cincy's not going to help that. So I will say Sex Panther with Frankie Montas. I like him probably more now than I did even last week, but I still think there's going to be bumps in the road. Cincy's just such a terrible park especially for a guy who gives up fly balls and homers. So yeah, I don't mind him, but it's probably a deeper league type scenario.
Okay. And Garrett Whitlock, he had 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned, and 8 Ks. This was at Seattle, so it was a very favorable matchup for him, but he still put in the good work here. Garrett Whitlock, does he fall in scientific fact, Sex Panther, or are you not believing in him?
No, I like Whitlock a lot. I scientific fact is like after one start, it's hard to say scientific fact, but Whitlock is close to a scientific fact for me. Like he has a 9.6 K per nine and a 1.8 walk per nine and a 3.47 ERA for his career. That's not those numbers are for Whitlock's career. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of those innings were out of the pen in middle relief, but still, like Whitlock's been good at every point in his career. So if he's not good, like if Whitlock is bad, it's kind of have to be unlucky. Like last year, his ERA was high, but that was with a 340 BABIP. Like Whitlock looks good. I like Whitlock a lot. I like Cutter Crawford. I actually really like the Red Sox rotation. You know, it's going to be tricky in Fenway. It's not necessarily the best place to pitch. But yeah, I'm in on Whitlock. I guess I'll say Sex Panther because it's so early, but that could be scientific fact in a couple weeks.
Yeah, Whitlock looked good in this one. Again, it was a good matchup, so it's nice that he did what he was supposed to do here, but controlled the walks. That wasn't an issue for him in that one. He's had pretty good control across the board. I don't expect him to be a sub-2 ERA guy like he currently is after one outing, but definitely like a sub-4 ERA, probably a solid whip. And, there's definitely some upside for strikeouts here. So, yeah, you can do a lot worse than adding Garrett Whitlock to your roster. Let's move off of the Anchorman game, Gray. You can celebrate now. Let's move over and talk some closers before we get out of here. Kinley is dealing with a minor back issue in Boston. Is it Chris Martin that we're looking at adding here?
Yeah, I said this a bunch today, but I bid on Chris Martin in all my leagues, and again, it was pretty flat on the bids. Like I got him for like $12 to $15, I think, out of 1,000, which is like nothing. I don't know, man. Like Kenley Jansen has had a back issue for like the last month. Back issues just don't suddenly evaporate, and Chris Martin looks good. So Chris Martin seems like a solid pickup, and like if you can grab him now, like absolutely, like grab Chris Martin now because I don't know if Jansen's going to be I feel like by the time this podcast comes out, Jansen will already be on the IL, and if not soon, because like after the next appearance or two, because like he's had a back issue all spring training, and then he throws once in the season and he can't go the next day because of the same back issue. Like this screams to me like Jansen's going to have a miserable season and be on and off the IL for months. But I don't know. If not, Chris Martin at least is a good backup for now, just in case Jansen has got to go, if he can't go back-to-back games. So Chris Martin's a good pickup for that alone. So, yeah, I would grab Martin everywhere.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I will say they're playing down Kinley's issue, but, we don't actually know how healthy he is or not, just like we were talking about off the top of the show with, spring training news. We don't always get the honest opinion from the club during the season either. So, yeah, I mean, Chris Martin could just be a very nice, easy to get insurance policy, especially if you own Kinley or if you're chasing saves. They don't have a face, so go grab them. Milwaukee, Abner Uribe seems to have at least taken the top spot in a committee there, but both him and Joel Payamps have gotten have gotten saves so far, Gray. Is it Abner that you're still kind of put it at the top. I know we talked about Joel before the season as just looking forward, but it seems like they're going to start Abner there for now.
Right. Yeah. So my thoughts on the Brewers closer situation is Abner is the closer as of right this second. But if he goes out and gives up runs or something, Payamps is going to step in and be the closer. Payamps is, I think honestly, I think Payamps and McGill are better than Uribe for saves. But if they're going to go with Uribe, he's the guy. And as of right now, it looks like it's Uribe's job to lose. So, which he could do. I mean, he gave up a homer to Pete Alonso the other day. Uribe could lose that job. I like Payamps as the handcuff.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably right now. But yeah, Payamps also has some very, very nice upside. So even if he's not necessarily the quote unquote closer, if you just have an open spot in like a daily league, or you don't trust the starter that week, you could do worse than adding him and throwing him for a week, even if he's not necessarily the closer. Detroit, Alex Lang was who we all thought was the closer. Jason Foley has gotten these saves though. They haven't really said anything in regards to whether Lang has lost his spot or if he's hurt. So we're still kind of waiting to see what happens here with the Tigers pin, Gray.
Yeah, well, Jason Foley is the closer, apparently. No one knew that. No one had any idea of that, like as recently as like last week. I don't know. Honestly, it's so bizarre because like I don't really pay attention to spring training. I mean, obviously, I pay attention to the to news like injuries and playing time and who's winning jobs. Like I pay attention to that stuff. But I could have sworn everyone thought Alex Lang was the closer. Like I would have heard something. I think if Alex Lang, like he just suddenly, like it was like spring training ended, and so did Alex Lang's job as closer. It's like all at the same time. Suddenly, like Jason Foley, it felt kind of like Jason Foley was the obvious closer as soon as the season started. Like it wasn't like Alex Lang came in to the first game, gave up a lead, and then Jason Foley cleaned up for him. Like Alex Lang's been like nowhere to be seen. Like he's basically in the middle, like he's throwing middle relief, like junk innings and looking awful. Like I don't even know what happened there. But Jason Foley, as far as I'm concerned, Jason Foley's the closer. And I would drop Alex Lang in all leagues. Like if anything, Jason Foley's the closer, and maybe like the handcuff now is like Chafin or Miller. It's not Lang.
Yeah, it's not a great position, and I had drafted Lang as a cheap closer in a lot of places, but yeah, it does not look like Tigers want him anywhere near the end of the game right now. And honestly, with the way he performed so far this year and his one appearance and how he looked in spring, I can't really blame them. He never really got it together. I guess in a deep league, you can hang on to Lang and see if it turns around. If every backup and their backups back up and their backup is owned. But it is also Detroit. So how many wins or how many save opportunities are coming from that team? Arizona, they obviously had the Sewell injury, and it looks like Kevin Ginkel is their guy, though.
Yeah, Ginkel, like, I was saying, I think I was saying on, I don't know, I said somewhere, but Ginkel, to me, Ginkel could potentially be the closer even when Sewald returns. Like, Ginkel has been good for a long time in Arizona. They know him. They like him. Sewald came in. I mean, Sewald is good. Don't get me wrong. Sewald could take the job back, but I think he's going to have to prove, like, if Ginkel does as well as we imagine he could do and, is like flawless until Sewald returns, I don't think they're just going to be like, oh yeah, Ginkel's now going to be the eighth inning guy again. Like, I think he could potentially be the closer all year. So I'm all in on Ginkel.
Yeah, I mean, Sewell's been good. It's not like he's, the most dominant pitcher in the game type of good, but I could see that. I mean, I could definitely see Ginkel holding on the job, or, at the least them not declaring a closer when Sewell comes back, and they, ease him in and see how it looks. I could definitely see that. So yeah, I think Ginkel probably is at the top of this list of closers we've talked about, because like you said, Kinley and Chris Martin, like that's a injury related. Uribe and Payamps, like that could go back and forth. Detroit's a mess. But yeah, I think Ginkel is pretty much the clear pickup among the ones we've talked about to this point. Over to Minnesota, though, they have a bunch of things going on. Griffin Jax seems like he's the closer there. Is that what you're thinking? Or are you not trusting Minnesota at all, as we probably shouldn't?
No, I don't. Griffin Jax looks great. I have no problem trusting him. Yeah, he's the closer. He seems like, I mean, I guess you can like handcuff Brock Stewart there, but yeah, I don't mind Griffin Jax. I think I got a save and a win this weekend from him. Yeah, don't be jinxing Jax. Don't jinx Jax.
Hey, I'm just saying, like, even when Duran was healthy, they didn't throw him out to close every single game. So that's really all I was saying, is Minnesota does not abide by traditional closer role here. So,
right. I agree. Yeah, but don't jinx.
Stewart could get in here. He could get some saves here and there too, is all I was saying.
That's fair. Don't jinx.
The A's. The A's have a few really interesting arms in their bullpen, which is about the only thing interesting on the entire Oakland team, Gray. But would you take a shot on Mason Miller, Danny Jimenez, or Lucas Urqueg?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the fact that the A's have good arms in the bullpen, it almost feels secondary to any actual strategy. Like, it just feels like happenstance that they landed on having good arms in the bullpen. They're like, I guess we have good arms in our bullpen because we didn't try and do anything. They have no actual strategy to do anything. So yeah, I don't know. Mason Miller's fine. He looks like, you might get some good strikeouts from him. I don't think I haven't seen any indication that he can stay healthy for longer than 40 innings, but yeah, he might be good for 40 innings. I don't know, which that would take you basically to around July, August. So yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I would pick up Mason Miller. I wouldn't speculate past him though. I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, and it's the A's. Yeah, Chicago White Sox, the last one we're talking about here, Gray. Kopech, Jordan Leisure, John Brebbia, they're all kind of in the mix there. But, I don't know that we have any kind of definitive answer as to who it is, since they haven't really had a save opportunity.
You know what? We could be saying that come June with the White Sox. There is a good chance that they won't have a save opportunity for months. I honestly, I think it's Kopech, but I would not be. I would like, this is one situation where I wouldn't even go near anyone, even if they said Kopech is our closer and he saves like tomorrow's game, like even if Kopech saves the game and the White Sox say definitively he's our closer, I still probably wouldn't pick him up. I mean, what are you going to get? Maybe 12 saves in 6 months? I don't know. It doesn't seem worth it unless you're really desperate.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. Do you think they get a save opportunity, or the Rockies get a save opportunity first, Greg?
The Rockies. See, the Rockies, I think that's Justin Lawrence's job. And I also would be real hesitant about rostering him too. I would be really hesitant. Like, you know what? That feels like a disaster waiting to happen. It's like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna put in Justin Lawrence to try and get some saves from the Rockies, and then they're in Coors, and he comes in and gives up 7 earned runs in the 9th inning, and you're like, oh, I didn't need saves that bad.
That's basically the mental conversation I had with myself as I was setting lineups this morning, and I was looking at Justin Lawrence. I was like, I could use a save. I don't really need a 45 ERA though, right off the bat this season. Let's go with somebody else. And so, yeah, I think Justin Lawrence probably stays on the bench until, I don't know, you see him do anything this season, which again, maybe like mid-May sometime.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, we have covered a good amount of things here. We've covered some FAAB, we've covered some injuries, we've covered all sorts of closer stuff. Let's go ahead and call it here.